Thanks for tuning into another newly listed on the CSE clip. As you know, I'm Anil Mall. I represent the Canadian Securities Exchange. And today I have the opportunity to sit down virtually with Colin Moore. Colin is the president of Westward Gold Inc. Colin, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Doing well, Anil. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Colin, so myself, and I'm sure our audience included, is very curious about Westward Gold Inc. Tell us a little bit about the company and what do you guys do?
Sure. Yeah. So Westward Gold was built over the last summer through a series of transactions. We've accumulated about 3,000 hectares of land on the Battle Mountain Eureka Trend in Nevada, surrounded by majors including Barrick, the Newmont Barrick JV, Anglo. So essentially, it's two projects that we've put together. On the western side, we have the Toiyabe project, which is a more advanced exploration asset. It's got about 370 drill holes in it. In 2009, there was a 43-101 published that identified 173,000 ounces at 1.2 grams per ton. Now, that is a historical resource as classified by the CIM, so it's not current. But nevertheless, there's been a lot of drilling, identified mineralization there. And then through another transaction, they also acquired Momentum Minerals, which actually I say they acquired it because at the time I was a founder and director of Momentum Minerals. So that's how I got involved with Westward. They're contiguous properties. Like I said, 3,000 hectares. We got Cortez Hills, the large Barrick mine, 10 clicks north of us. Gold Rush is very close by. So very good neighborhood. Good geology. And we've also spent the summer putting together what we think is a very strong team of technical experts on the advisory side, the board side, and the management side.
Colin, most of our audience members that are watching must know about Nevada, its historic significance in mining. And of course, obviously the company is in a great region with lots of potential. So before we get into your background and your team, I actually want to talk to you a little bit about the strategy behind going public. Sure. Obviously, the cost, the ability to be able to raise capital is one of it. But was there anything else that kind of drove you and your team to take this public?
Well, I think it's a series of factors. One, obviously, opening up the investment opportunity to a broader audience. Not everyone can participate in private rounds. Liquidity for our early shareholders, who are all they're long-term holders, but it's nice to be able to trade in and out easily, and just the exposure that it brings, and also from an M&A perspective, dealing with other public companies. It oftentimes, and we found this out pretty early when we were a private company trying to acquire projects. Vendors prefer public market shares. It goes without saying, it's easier to realize value that way.
Well said. Now, you mentioned this earlier when you're doing the introduction. Obviously, you have a background in mining. Talk to us a little bit more about your background and how you got into the space.
Sure. So I started out as a mining engineer about 15, 16 years ago. Following that, did a couple years in ops, working for companies including Agnico Eagle Mines up in Nunavut. Did some consulting work, and then went back to school, did my MBA, and then following that, I really transitioned into the corporate finance world of mining, starting out in investment banking at Bank of Montreal and Toronto on their mining team, and then in 2015 transitioning to private equity. So I worked for Waterton on their investment team. They're a $2 billion private equity fund, deploying capital mostly into Nevada. I'd say 95% of the acquisitions were in Nevada, so that was a really good introduction to the state. And then about 4 years ago, I got recruited to move out to Vancouver to work for another private equity company called Pacific Road Capital. They ended up going through a partnership transition, and I left, and that was when I founded Momentum Minerals with some partners, and it's been a just over a 2-year journey to get from that to where we are now.
Now, so that brings you to Westward Gold Inc, and that's the company we're talking about today. Are there any key team members that you've brought on board to help move this project forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So we made two board additions over the summer, 3 additions to our technical advisory board. We added a VP of exploration. So really we were starting from kind of from the ground level. So Westward is actually the new version. In October, we changed our name. We used to be IM Exploration. So they were essentially a shell company listed on the CSC. They had a graphite asset in Ontario, hence the name IM, which stands for Industrial Minerals. Anyway, so we added a VP exploration, David Browning. He's based in Reno. He's an expert in spectroscopy. He knows Nevada geology like the back of his hand. And it's great to have someone actually down in Nevada managing the day-to-day for us, which makes it a lot easier. And then on the board side, we added Dave Kelly. So he is the CEO of Chicana Copper, but an exploration geologist by trade. Lots of experience in Nevada working for big majors. So he's been very helpful there. And we also added Warren Beal, who is a securities lawyer, and he's the general counsel for Mavericks Metals, the large royalty company. And on the technical advisory board, 2 names that I'll mention, Stephen Kaler, who most recently spent a decade at Gold Standard Ventures. So he knows Nevada geology and specifically Carlin type deposits extremely well. He's made 11 discoveries, or been on the discovery team of 11 different finds, and so far 7 of them have become producing mines. So really strong technical guy to have on the board. Also Richard Bedell, who's probably best known for discovering the Long Canyon deposit, which ended up being ultimately sold to Newmont for $2.3 billion. So we've really tried to get some bench strength onto the company, specifically as it relates to Carlin type deposits in Nevada, because ultimately that's the big prize that we're hunting right now.
Mining has had a lot of buzz again in the last little while here, a lot of companies coming to market. Colin, what would you say differentiates a company like Westward Gold and your team from some of your peers that might be in the similar space?
Sure, and you touched on it, but the competition for attention and for capital in this space is fierce, right? It's really difficult to differentiate yourself. So I think what we have is it's fresh. This is a new management team. This is my first venture as a principal in a public company. I've always been, on the capital market side, but from more of a consulting or a banking or an institutional investor point of view, right? So now the shoe's on the other foot, and I'm trying to solicit capital instead of telling people no, we can't invest in you. But so it's a lot different. But what differentiates, we're still very much on the ground floor here. We've only just recently put the company together as it currently is made up. So these assets have been around for a fair amount of time, but they've never been a flagship asset in a company. So the Toiyabe project was held under option by Starcore, and Starcore was busy with their operations in Mexico. They were commissioning a mine, so they didn't really have a lot of attention for this project. And that was part of the reason why we were able to get it from them. Similarly, on the Turquoise Canyon side, that was held by First Mining, and they were busy. They still are very busy in Ontario with their large Springpole project there. So essentially, these were I want to say unloved assets that didn't really get the attention they deserved, I think, and they haven't been systematically explored as a flagship asset using modern techniques. And that's really what we're doing here. We've consolidated the 2 projects, and there's if you look at our corporate deck, there's a lot of reasons geologically why these 2 projects belong together. And as far as we know, in modern times, this is the first time a company's held both together. There's a massive gravity anomaly that straddles the projects, and thrust faults go from west to east. So and we're looking to consolidate more land. We always have our ears to the ground here, but we truly believe that with the attention we're going to be spending on this, so there's a significant potential for a new discovery here.
Well said. Now, I know the company is just listed. You have a lot of work to do ahead of you, but are there any milestones you're able to talk to our audience about that they can look out for?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this week we just put out a press release, and that is fairly technical in nature, but it related to the hyperspectral program that we did on all the old drill core that we had acquired. So essentially, what we're doing is we're trying to figure out the relationship between the alteration we're seeing in the host rock and the assay results, the mineralization. So we have a really good sense of that. We've confirmed the host rocks are primarily the Wenban Formation and the Roberts Mountain Formation. And why that's important is a lot of the surrounding mines, primarily barrick mines, those are very important host rocks for these Carlin type deposits. So that was positive. And then the next coming catalysts, we're going to be putting out a more fulsome field wrap up. So we had 3 programs going on in the summer, no drilling yet, but all of this is building the foundation for our maiden drill program that will be launching in the springtime. So we're going to be putting out a lot of information related to targeting, high priority drill targets. And then in the first half of the new year, we're going to be putting drills on the ground.
Colin, where can our viewers go to read up on your project, your team members, obviously the press release that you just mentioned, and hopefully sign up for upcoming press so they can keep up with news that your team will be putting out?
Absolutely, yeah. So the best place for all of that would be westwardgold.com. You can sign up for our news releases to get updates sent to your inbox, profiles, more in-depth profiles on all our management, directors, advisory committee, corporate presentation, photos, videos, all the good stuff.
Perfect. Colin, I think you've given us a great introduction to Westward Gold and your team. I would encourage anybody watching to go to the website, take a look at what Colin has and his team have put together. Again, you've been watching a newly listed on the CSE clip. I'm Anil Mall with the Canadian Securities Exchange, and you've been listening to Colin Moore, who is the president of Westward Gold Inc., trades on the CSE under the symbol WG. Thank you for tuning in to another newly listed on the CSE. Please feel free to hit like and share this content, and hit subscribe if you haven't already.